Happy Monday. Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. We're live on a Monday afternoon. Hope you're enjoying the start of your week. And it's a new week of podcasts. Only had one last week, but I know it was one that got a lot of traffic because it was about the Illinois basketball offseason. We will dive more into that as we get more news. Michael Tulip is going to have a live podcast with us on Tuesday afternoon. But today it's me, Jeremy Werner, Illini Inquirer publisher, with Joey Wagner. And Joey, we got some spring football to catch up on. We got some recruiting stuff we'll get to at some point, but this podcast is going to be the top 10 storylines of spring football. But I must shout out Mr. Wagner. Gave me a little time off, got away with the family to Vegas. I didn't do the Vegas thing. It was more of the family Vegas thing, which was still necessary and needed. So Joey's been covering most of spring football so far. So thank you, Joey.
Problem, I do wish you would have done like the full Vegas thing just with your family in town. I don't know how well that would have gone over. Probably understandably not very, but that would have been a fun story to have you come back with. Degenerate Jeremy out on the town.
I'm not as bold as Brett Behrens. Throwing him out there. No, but it was a good time. Wasn't that warm, but it was way warmer than it was here. But I got to spend a lot of time with the wife and kids. So
what are the top non Vegas options when you're out there? Because I honestly don't. I just assume it's what I know Vegas to be.
Yeah, so my in-laws own a house out there. It's like a half hour from the Strip, and the kids just love the pool, man. They'd be happy just doing that. We hit up a couple children's museums in Vegas. So we did the Children's Museum tour of Vegas, which was really solid. One that Blippi, for all my dads out there and moms out there, Blippi went to one of them. So we went to that one. My kids were really excited about that. Hopefully you never have to watch Blippi, Joey. But,
I think he was in Champaign like a month ago.
Was he?
Maybe the Excavator song? Is that him?
Yes, Excavator song. Yeah, it gets stuck in your head over and over and over again. We also did Circus, where we did a lot of arcade games, stuff like that. Did get to go out with the in-laws, went out with the wife one time, so got a little bit of that. But nah, I'm not a huge gambler anyway. Like if I go to do the real Vegas thing, just put me at a pool and give me a bunch of drinks. That's all I need to enjoy, Joey. It was
Absolutely.
It was a good time. All right, so we want to break down the top 2023 Illinois football spring storylines. And Joey, maybe we can go back and forth here, but I do think the number one storyline of this team for me is year two of Barry Lunny Jr. and this offense. We saw strides last year from Barry Lunny Jr. in this offense, which was a big part of the reason Illinois was in a bowl game. Their defense was elite. We can use that word actually because they were the number one scoring defense, number one passing efficiency defense, number one in interceptions. They're going to have several guys get drafted from that defense. So the defense really carried this team for most of the year, but the offense did enough to get Illinois to a bowl game, unlike 2 years ago. They improved by 4.1 points per game, 3.5 first downs per game, and the passing game was just competent. Of course, we saw the offense struggle at times as well. The red zone numbers were not good. They weren't able to score enough touchdowns this season. Late in the season, they really weren't able to score many points outside of that Northwestern game. So I think year two is going to be interesting, Joey, about how they take leaps and what it looks like to take leaps because you lose an All-American running back. We'll dive into the personnel, but what are your thoughts about Barry Lunny year two, how they can improve?
Probably, the red zone was something Barry Lunny brought. I remember last year we asked him pretty much every time we talked to him about how they would improve the red zone game to game, and he brought it up. That's something they're working on and improving. They have to because they left quite a few points out on the board in that red area last season. But I think it's a passing game, Jeremy, and ideally, and as you've covered at length, having a quarterback in his second year like they attempted to get with Tommy DeVito would have made you think, I don't know if you would think differently about it, I don't know, but Luke Altmaier, I don't know that you and I are really covering this as if we believe it's a true quarterback competition. So we think it's going to be Luke Altmaier. How much can you take a step forward in that passing game and not be so run heavy? Obviously, Chase Brown is gone. I think that's it, man. Like, you've got to be more effective in the passing game, and we say that after it took a step from the first season under Tony Peterson. But that's a big one for me.
Yeah, this passing game under Tommy DeVito was efficient, right? For the most part, its completion percentage went up 18% from the year prior. Pass efficiency rating went up 29 points. Didn't throw a lot of the interceptions, but you didn't throw enough touchdowns. You didn't have enough big plays in that passing game. So that's what you're looking for next. And we'll get into that a little bit with the wide receivers. But Barry Lundy talked a lot about how he made a big jump year 2 at UTSA. It was his first year back as an offensive coordinator at the FBS level. He was way early in his career. But just you have a lot of guys returning. 8 of the 11 starters in the ReliaQuest Bowl are back on this team. Now, Chase Brown was not in the ReliaQuest Bowl, and he's a big one that was there. Of course, a couple offensive linemen there. But you return a lot of guys, and you return a lot of depth that knows the terminology, that knows the offense. Barry Lundy knows his personnel a lot better now. So while you make a change at quarterback, and we'll talk about that here in a second, just the comfort of that offense. You can get more into the nitty gritty of this right away in spring ball rather than building up again. Now, Barry does reteach everything, but that always seems to help, right? When you look at what the jump they made year 1 to year 2 defensively in the same scheme. So you had the stat, Joe. It's the first spring ball they've had the same offensive coordinator at Illinois since 2019, because 2020 spring ball didn't happen with Rod Smith there. So that has some value, and I imagine that's going to show up statistically. But there is a lot of room for growth, even though they had tangible growth last year. It wasn't like they went from 110th in the country to 50th. They went from 110th in the country to something like 80th, right? So they still have a lot of room for growth, and there's a lot on Barry Lundy, right? But what I like about Barry is he takes a lot of accountability and a lot of responsibility for that, but he also has confidence that he's going to get it done this year.
Yeah, a couple points to build off of that. Barry Lundy was asked, like, what's next for the offense? Little Ted Lasso Cup. Look at that, Jeremy. Asked what was
Walmart the other day. I had to get.
Oh, all right. He was asked, like, what's next for the offense? And he said, basically, the ceiling of last year kind of becomes the floor of this year. And he said, look, no one mistake that as like a statistical, like, if we don't have X number of these yards, it's a failure or disaster. That's not the case. But in terms of growth, in terms of just the building on the offense, like, that's what he means. And Isaiah Williams I asked him, I said, well, what's that look like, man? Like, how does that play out? And he basically said, hey, like, think of it like George McDonald echoed it. You've got 20 yards or 12 yards to make, this is what you want to accomplish in this route for 12 yards. Those first 11 are yours. Like, paint, do whatever. When you're talking Isaiah Williams, that means make people miss or make people uncomfortable or get people on their heels. But, like, the big picture, and the rest is kind of to maximize some of those talents within. So, yeah, there's still a lot of upward. And I know people got annoyed last year when we said, well, the offense has taken a step forward, because it did leave a lot to be desired. Like, I think that's kind of the balance there. It's like, this offense stunk in 2021. It was terrible, and it's not like it'd been particularly good before that. So a step forward is still something to say, hey, this is a good thing, but that doesn't mean like, yeah, don't worry about it. The rest will play out. Like there's still room. And that's, I think, what Barry Lundy was saying when the ceiling becomes the floor. I feel like Michael Jordan at North Carolina is saying that right now.
Yeah, there's nuance. It was a far better offense, considerably better, competent offense. It was not a good offense, right? Like, it had a great play.
Take Chase Brown off of there, and then
yeah, and we'll dive into some of those intricacies. If you want a little basketball break, Dane Danger just tweeted out, for those that are wondering, I will be staying. So these player meetings are happening, Joey, and now we have Dane Danger and Luke Goody on the record that they are returning. A new part of the basketball offseason is the announcement of, I am coming back for my second year at Illinois. Like, that's what we get now. So, but that's big news for Illinois basketball. We'll dive into on another podcast. All right, storyline number 2 for Illinois football. How do they replace Chase Brown? What does this running back rotation look like? And Joey, I know you talked with Thad Ward a little bit. You talked with Barry Lundy. I do think it's a rotation It was meant to be a rotation last year of Chase Brown and Josh McCray, but Josh McCray's injury obviously made a big dent in those plans, and they just rode Chase Brown and to 300 plus carries. I looked up a stat, Joey, the returning running backs. I think we think there's depth and some talent there, but there's not a lot of experience. 3 total games of 70 plus rushing yards between all the returning running backs and 9 total games of 10 plus carries. So while Josh McCray, Reggie Love have some experience, it's a largely untested group as lead backs.
It is. And I thought Barry Lunny said something interesting. The exact quote when he was asked about, do you anticipate a one guy back like Chase Brown ultimately was? And to your point, Jeremy, before we get too far, like, it's clear to us that wasn't the goal. Josh McCray's injury really skewed that. But then at some point, you got the nation's leading rusher, and like that makes sense to go that way. But he said, I don't know if necessarily last year was an ideal situation. I think it was unique in Coach Bielema's track record that we rely on one guy so heavily, in particular in the backfield. Part of that was due to we weren't healthy behind him throughout the course of the season as we would have liked to have been. There were games we were healthier than others. Obviously, got to the point where we were kind of riding the hot hand. And he said, I don't see that going forward. And not because we don't have that type of caliber of a player. We just think the integrity of our offense and the balance that we need, more guys pulling that rope and sharing that load this year, which lines up with exactly, Jeremy, what you and I kind of have thought about this running back room. So like if you're looking for a X player comes in and becomes 2023 Chase Brown, you're probably going to be looking for a while. It might mean, I think you and I talked about on the way to get Mays. Shout out to Mays. Jeremy, you really got me hooked there. It might mean 2 or 3 guys have maybe – I still think 1,000-yard rusher is probably on the table because we've seen Brett Bielema's 15, 16-year history. But it might – you're not going to see that. Like I don't think you're going to look up in early November and say, oh, so-and-so is leading the nation in rushing from Illinois. Like I don't know that makes sense. So I think you look at a Josh McCray, you look at a Reggie Love, and then who, right? Is it Aiden Lawfrey? Is it Jordan Anderson? Those two seem to me to be the most likely candidates to rise into that. Caden Fagan just got here 3 months ago. So let's pump the brakes, even though he is physically, goodness gracious, what a large individual. But I think it's which one of those redshirt freshmen steps up and becomes that third back. That's my question in spring. We know the top 2. Who becomes the third?
No, I think Reggie Love out of this group is Mr. Reliable right now, which is weird to say because he struggled with injuries through most of his career until last year. But he did show in the last 2 games, what do you have, 125 yards, a really good performance. I know it's against Northwestern, which was the cellar dweller of the Big Ten last year, but that was encouraging. I think he can be productive. Is he explosive enough? Can he be more explosive? I think he's a solid option in your rotation. If you had asked me which guy I think is the number 1 back or could be, it'd be Josh McCray, because we've seen him look like a number 1 back. It was a freshman year, and last year he didn't look the same with the injuries, but that's the guy I think could be the number 1 because we've seen it. But of course, he's a different kind of number 1 back than Chase Brown was. Chase Brown really explosive. Josh McCray, kind of the Monte Ball, John Clay, kind of that you saw from Bielema at Wisconsin. I think Bielema really likes him. But there are some young, intriguing guys. Aiden Lawfrey has not been able to stay healthy, but if he could, he's the most explosive back there. Jordan Anderson, we've heard some positive reviews of him. Sounds like Barry Lunny likes him. Sounds like he's taken some step forward. Thad Ward mentioned him to me yesterday, just kind of saying, hey, he had a good day today. So those are all encouraging things, but this is a great competition. I've played with the idea of, do you go at a portal running back? Because I think you can get a great one, but I do think there's enough here to be productive. I just don't know how it's all going to work out. I would say McCray and Love are the most likely, but I wouldn't count out Anderson and Lawfrey. And we've seen in previous years, maybe outside of last year, but last year you did need to go deeper in your depth chart for your second back. You're going to need 4 of them. So I think Illinois feels good about its depth. It's just, I don't think you're getting another Chase Brown year, but Brett Bielema does produce a lot of 1,000-yard backs. So don't know who it'll be, Joey, but I do think they're going to have a good rushing attack.
Yeah, and the Vegas theme, I don't know what the odds would be for a 1,000-yard back at Illinois, but I think I would take the likelihood that they have one because the history's there. It's interesting. I don't know, Jeremy, like at this point, you kind of are, like you didn't go in the portal in the winter to get a running back. unless somebody comes out and who's interesting and interested after spring ball, I think you just kind of ride with what you have. Barry Lunny, they seem comfortable. I see someone said as the staff not sold on Reggie Love. Barry Lunny said he's basically the only guy he's seen healthy. I mean, I think the staff likes what they have. Now, I do wonder, is like, because like remember last year at this time, it was like, oh, well, Kendall Smith is the free safety. And our conversation centered around a lot of like, yeah, but what if X young player comes in and moves him? And guess what? Kendall Smith didn't relinquish that job all year. So like, I don't like, I kind of feel similarly about that spot a year removed. And I think Reggie Love showed some things last year. He was a tough runner. He the most consistent back they have returning. He's interesting, man. And remember, he was a pretty good win. Thad Ward recruited him, Jeremy, out of Trinity before Thad left for Temple.
Yeah, I'm not trying to discount Reggie Love. I think he's earned this opportunity to be the number one back. I just think he's going to share carries, and I think he's going to get pushed, as he should. And this is what you want. This is the kind of depth you want, where you feel like, hey, maybe Jordan Anderson can steal some carries here, whether it's from McCray or from Love or Aiden Laughley. You need speed is what I question with Reggie Love, right? I think he's a good back. I think he's a good all-around back. I think he can be more explosive the more healthy he gets. He's dealt with foot injuries throughout his career, and he showed last year, late in the year, that, man, he's deserved more opportunity. But I still think other guys deserve looks as well. So I think it's a good position to be. All right, third storyline for Illinois football spring ball. Does the wide receiver tight end group take a step forward? They certainly did last year, Joey. 4 guys set career highs in receiving yards last year for Illinois. Obviously, their top 4 wide receivers. Hightower, Bryant, of course, Hightower has moved on, Isaiah Williams, and Casey Washington all did that. So that is a nice step forward. But the one thing George McDonald has talked about with this group, I think he did it a couple days ago with you guys. I talked to him about it after signing day. He's really talked about getting more yards after the catch. Isaiah Williams is great at it. And we can dive into Isaiah here a little bit, but he was number 1 in the Big Ten in yards after catch per reception. And I think he's got another level to take. I think he's the best playmaker on this team now with Chase Brown gone. And I think he's going to get a lot more touches because Chase Brown is gone. But among 46 qualified wide receivers in the Big Ten, Hightower and Bryant ranked 40th in yak per reception. Casey Washington was 45th. They need those other guys to make more big plays and make more big plays in space, down the field, all of that. So we'll see what the quarterback position is. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I do think the wide receivers and tight ends, Tip Ryman, really good player, wasn't very good catching the ball down the field.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Jeremy. I think they have to. They have to take a step. George McDonald said, yards after the catch and score touchdowns. So who is your other yards after the catch guy? I think you and I both think Pat Bryant. I thought he showed quite a bit last year as a sophomore. I'm really intrigued by what he can do as a junior. But Casey Washington said the other day, he's like, I want to show I'm more than just a sure hands guy. Like I can do things. I think that's a challenge with him is expand that more than just being a possession wide receiver who moves the chains on 6-yard completions, and be able to be a little more explosive within the course of the offense, which is I think you need that, because remember, Jeremy, in fall, Malik Elsey's coming, Colin Dixon's coming. I'm not trying to oversell the expectations for those two, but those are 2 guys who can do quite a bit of things, and Malik Elsey in particular, I think, is somebody who's going to really compete for playing time come fall. So this is a chance for some of those returners to get that, it maybe expand, I should say, that head start during spring ball. But you've got to be more productive in some of those, make big plays, make big plays or bigger plays. Tight end, I'll end up pitching this one to you, Jeremy, but I like Tip Ryman said, basically he spent the winter working on catching everything, which exactly lines up with what we thought Tip Ryman needed to improve in the offseason, is making some of those catches, being more assertive in the passing game. But then who, right? They go out and they get Tanner Arkin out of Colorado State. They have some redshirt freshmen, Henry Boyer, Owen Anderson, Navion Cargill, who are interesting. I thought moving Ben Schultz over it was interesting. I don't know that it's ultimately going to matter in any capacity, but like there's like a Marquez type of trajectory with him. But who steps up as number 2 tight end? I think Arkin would probably, in my mind, lead that, but we've seen 40 minutes of largely stretching. So I don't know that I can say that with any sureness.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen enough Tanner Arkin to know, like, is he way more athletic than Luke Ford? Because Luke Ford just, we saw his pro day. Wasn't it fast? Didn't, you've seen Tip Ryman just take off as, his work ethic is unbelievable. And that's why I have confidence, Joey, he will be better because his work ethic is insane. And he's gotten better every single year, gone from a walk-on to a guy that NFL teams are asking about. Like, he's still got a ways to go to prove himself as an NFL prospect, draft prospect, but they got their eyes on him because he's improved a lot. He's shown a lot in the blocking game. Now his next step is the passing game. But yeah, I think Tanner Arkin, Henry Boyer would be my guys there, but we'll see what Cargill and Anderson look like a year into this thing. But 3 guys will play there. But the wide receiver, I don't know. You know who the guys are going to be, right? Like Washington, Bryant, Williams. And then it's about who else gets in the rotation. I think Malik Elsey's got a good chance to be one of those guys. Not guaranteed. He's still just going to be a freshman. But he's a very talented freshman, one that's physically ready to play. Colin Dixon, physically ready to play. But Hank Beatty in the slot. If Isaiah Williams gets hurt, knock on wood, you don't want that to happen because he's probably your best offensive skill player. He's got to step up. He got some playing time last year. I still think Ian Pugh and Ashton Hollins are probably a year away. And we just don't know what Sean Miller looks like on the field because of his injuries. He was the guy I thought could make an early impact, just like Dixon and Elsley last year, but just the injuries. And then Kanari Wilcher certainly brings speed. He's probably raw at wide receiver, but he's one of the best in Florida, and he certainly brings speed to a team that needs speed. So it's a wide receiver group I like long-term, but I think you just need steps from the guys you already have. Can Pat Bryant become a guy who can be a 700-yard guy, opposite of Isaiah Williams? Casey Washington, is there a huge step there? I don't think so, but I like having him in my wide receiver room. So I feel like that group's going to take a step forward. Just how big of a step is probably the biggest question.
I do think it's worth both listening to what they say and watching what they do, in the sense of not sniffing around the transfer portal for a wide receiver. Remember, they added Jonah Williams, or Jonah, is it Williams? Morris, excuse me. Morris last season for depth. We didn't even really catch wind that there was a lot of involvement for wide receivers in the transfer portal. And they moved Miles Scott, who was he's he had some plays last season. He was part of the rotation. They moved him to defensive back. So you got to watch also how they go about this in terms of their roster building. And that, to me, indicates they've got some confidence in what they have in a room that's a heck of a lot better this spring than it was the first spring that George McDonald was leading it in 2021.
We will get to the position everyone wants to talk about. I'm not trying to bury it, but you and I have an affinity for the offensive line, Joey. And this is a really intriguing group because we know 3 starters are for certain. They had 2 huge returners. Isaiah Adams is probably the best NFL draft prospect on this team now. Johnny Newton might quibble with that, but talking with a scout, those are the 2 top prospects on this team. Probably could have gone mid-rounds if he just went one and done after coming from JUCO. Getting him back is monstrous. Julian Pearl, a proven left tackle in the Big Ten, could have potentially went late in the draft, but definitely would have gotten into a camp as an intriguing guy due to his length, athleticism, and how much he's improved. Those 2 guys locked in as starters. And then I would say Zy Chrysler, right? Locked in as one of the starters after starting a guard last year. Then it's kind of open. And this is where it's interesting, Joey. And I know you've dove into this with Bart Miller, how it all shakes out, who plays where. That's the intrigue here. Who could push for a starting spot, who ultimately wins those starting spots. And the center position certainly is one of intrigue. So you talked to Bart about it. What do you think of this group?
I think they're excited with however it lands, but here's what the sense I've gotten. They want to keep the left side, if at all possible, intact, of Julian Pearl at left tackle, Isaiah Adams at left guard. They like that combination. Obviously, Isaiah Adams has shown himself to be a very good left guard, an all Big Ten left guard. Pearl the same at left tackle. I think Zy Chrysler he's out this spring. It was a surgery. Sounds like that they knew was coming, but it ultimately just, kind of had to happen. They got all the way through. You'll remember he left the ReliaQuest Bowl with an injury. So this isn't some spring injury or winter conditioning injury, but it sounds like he'll be ready to go when this comes back, and he should assume a spot, you would think, at right guard. But then what happens with right tackle? Do you feel comfortable enough to look at like a Josh Gesky? Could Zy Chrysler slide out there? Or do you move Isaiah Adams over? Like Isaiah Adams has that versatility. I think it's one of the most appealing qualities for him, especially as you look at the next level. But you'd say that with the reminder that they like the left side. So if Josh Gesky, I think it's a guy to really monitor. If he could rise up and grab that right tackle spot, all the better. Otherwise, can you move an Adams or Chrysler out there? And then, Jordan Slaughter's another returner they have. There's a 6-man last year. Could he move into a starting spot? There's so many different possibilities there. And then center, right? Like center's the one that you've got to, you wonder. Alex Pihlstrom did everything you could have asked him to do and more last year. He really, as far as 1-year bridge gap guys, you could not have asked for a better spot. He was an all Big Ten guy. Is this the year Josh Kreutz? He has been the name since he's a Kreutz, right? And in Illinois, if you're a Kreutz and you play offensive line, specifically center, people are going to be pretty excited about you. He's not as big as Alex Pihlstrom was. He's probably, is he as big as Doug Kramer was? I mean, he's not a very big guy, but he's got all those intangibles, right? Obviously, his family lineage. His dad, Olin Kreutz, is great for the Bears. Can he just finally grab that job and say, the heck with everybody else? This is my position. I know he's hungry, and I think there was some confidence last year that if in a pinch, if Pihlstrom went down, they would have been comfortable with putting him out there. So it's not like they don't like him or think he can do it. You want to see him grab it and take that position. The interesting one, Jeremy, to me, is Zach Barlev starting to take snaps at center. Bart Miller told us that he was taking the number 2 snaps on that first day. Like, that is a really intriguing option. Suddenly those class of 2021 offensive linemen that really weren't swimming in Power 5 offers, suddenly all 3 of those guys are really inserting their name, which is what good programs are supposed to do, by the way, is wait a few years for that, as possibly moving into a role right now. So I think those are the 3 to monitor. I think Jordan Slaughter is really interesting. Like, he's really, really interesting. I think Bart Miller has said, I want to see him cut it loose. I mean, he's got everything you want. They obviously tried to get him the ball to snap a little bit. Could he be in that mix there? I don't know, man. I think there's a lot of options, but the big takeaways is they want to keep the left side together if at all possible, but they're not going to hamstring themselves simply by doing that.
Yeah, my thing is, I think they're going to be good regardless, right? Because now you're starting to get the depth in the competition you need to actually, like the fact that Jordan Slaughter we're not throwing in immediately as a starter, like the fact that he could actually be pushed is something they haven't had the last couple of years. Like, I don't know if Alex Pihlstrom actually had competition much last year. I know Kreutz was involved there, but I still think he needed another year.
Maybe not as much in the spring, but I think as the season, you got through fall, and as the season, there's probably more. But yeah, I'm with you.
That's kind of what I mean. Like, after the 6th guy, there was really no competition last year. I think there is more of that this year. I think Barlev can push Kreutz. They could add a transfer after the spring if they don't love the center position. Desmond Schuster's coming in, as a JUCO kid. Will he be ready by fall? I don't know, but he's coming in the summer and adds even more competition. Hunter Whitenack is a van, as Brett Bielema likes to say, just massive man. So they're getting better depth there. And the fact that, we've heard good things about Gesky, that they think he can play, even if he's not a starter, the fact that they could have some confidence he could play would be huge at tackle, to have another tackle that can be in the mix there and potentially leave Isaiah Adams at guard, where he was, in my opinion, one of the few best guards in a loaded Big Ten conference on the offensive line. All right, let's get to what the people want, Joey.
Punter.
How's the new quarterback room perform? We have not seen much of these guys, but obviously it's a very different look. All 3 of your top quarterbacks are gone. Tommy DeVito, Art Sikowski still there, doing Art Sikowski things as a leader, just not throwing the football now as he's a student assistant. And of course, Ryan Johnson, your 3rd quarterback last year, is all gone. So a lot of inexperience in this room, including the number 1 guy. I don't think it's a huge competition for QB1. Unless Luke Altmaier really just does not perform this spring, he is going to be the starting quarterback. But I thought they really threaded the needle in the portal, Joey. Getting Luke Altmaier with 3 years of eligibility as your top guy, it was him and Hudson Card. They're recruiting. Hudson Card, I think, is going to be more ready to hit the ground running because he's got more experience. I really like him for Purdue. But Luke Altmaier was a really good option for them, has some experience, really talented, really accurate with the ball for the most part, quick release. But you also had a John Paddock as a walk-on, a kid who started every game at Ball State last year, a Division I experience. You add that to a room, along with Donovan Leary, who there's been some positive buzz about, that he's, taken a step forward and could be ready to compete. Like, I think those are 3 pretty solid options. I don't fear that quarterback room, but of course you need Luke Altmaier in the Big Ten to perform. Like, it is his job. And now Illinois, put a lot on him to move this offense forward. The one thing Barry Lunny has mentioned a lot is he's got guys around who've been in part of this offense that we think can lift him up until he gets up to speed with us, and then he can lift the rest of the group.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the biggest battle right now is the backup quarterback battle between Donovan Leary and John Paddock. I mean, I know they're going to tell us, right? They're going to coach speak this thing all the way through, probably into fall camp. That it's, I don't believe that. I didn't believe it last year. I don't believe it this year. Again, we know what they're going to tell us, but I just think you got to kind of decipher some of that. Yeah, man. Luke Altmaier's, he kind of hitched his wagon to Barry Lunny to be given his chance. It sounds like he felt like he was ready a year ago at Ole Miss. He was a guy who has been in a couple quarterback. I don't know. He probably wasn't in a battle with Matt Corral his freshman year, but he and Jackson Dart battled it out last spring, last fall, and really into the first 2 weeks of last season, Jeremy. I'm interested in him. We've talked to him once. He is not Tommy DeVito, and that's not a knock on Luke Altmaier, because Tommy DeVito and really Art Sikowski are in the 99th percentile of loud human beings who are comfortable in a field of their enemies. It's unbelievable. Like, there's a reason we all kind of gawked over how Tommy DeVito handled himself last year, because there's just not a lot of guys like that. So I know there's some hand-wringing, I guess, over – and really it doesn't seem to me like from inside the program, to be honest with you, some hand-wringing over Luke Altmaier's vocality.
Yeah, so Luke Altmaier met with us media, and he's not Tommy. I don't know many people in my life outside of Lonte who are like Tommy DeVito.
Lonte could be the mayor of literally the next town he moved to within a year.
Correct. There's just not many people like that. When you go into a new environment, like I'm a pretty social guy, but it's going to take me a little bit of time to warm up. It's pretty natural. But I remember asking Casey Washington, Pat Bryant, when I saw them at an NIL event. I asked them, what's your impressions of Luke Altmaier? And they were saying he was a little quiet to start, but once he warms up, man, he's a lot of fun. He's a character. He's different than Tommy, but it doesn't seem like an issue for them. And everything we've heard out of Ole Miss is how much they love this guy. And the fact that he came back for the bowl game with them to be there just in case they had an injury to play for his teammates, I think that says a lot. So until it becomes an issue, and I hear it from Brett Bielema and the rest of the staff that we need him to be more vocal, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it, because as you said, Tommy DeVito and Art Sikowski are like 99th percentile vocal guys.
And by the way, we've seen Brett Bielema have a willingness to stand at a microphone and say, I need our quarterback to be more vocal. He did it with Brandon Peters. And I understand that's where from the fan base, a lot of the hesitancy comes from. But think about what Luke – so we've talked to him one time. He had been on campus for all of 6 weeks. At that point, we talked to him, and there's 15 new faces, 4 TV cameras, 8 cell phone cameras, and just no rhythm to any conversation. That is a daunting – spot for I don't care who you are. It's just not a very comfortable setting, and people are asking literally everything under the sun to try to get any sense of who he is. It's hard to do that. It's hard. We have not gotten the sense that this is a concern. We've gotten the sense that, yeah, he's different. That's okay. People are different. Can he make the throws? Do his teammates believe in him? Anything other than that is just noise. That's frankly, I don't really understand why it's so loud right now, because we've talked to the guy one time.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you need time to become a leader, right? Like most guys need multiple years. Quarterback is different. I get it. But you know what's important? His knowledge of the offense, his accuracy, his decision making, and he's got enough talent in all those regards. And the one thing I really like about his game, he can move. He's a better runner than Tommy. Even some of his teammates, like Tommy, wasn't a slouch in that area, but his teammates have talked about how Luke Altmaier can really run. But that's another reason you need some backups who can perform. And John Paddock, can go into a game and at least be ready for it. Donovan Leary, we'll see. We haven't seen much of those guys besides throwing the ball a little bit on air. So that we'll have to find out during the spring game and more when the season goes along. All right, let's move on to the defensive side of the ball, where obviously Illinois set a really, really high standard last year. And Joey, I know they're losing a bunch in the secondary. We'll get into that here in a second. But what they return up front, this defensive front, the best for Illinois since when, I don't know. But when you get Johnny Newton, a first team All Big Ten player back, Keith Randolph, third team All Big Ten, he'd argue he deserves higher. I had him second team All Big Ten, by the way, Keith. And then Gabe Akis and Seth Coleman. Akis was unbelievable for a freshman All-American. Don't overlook what Seth Coleman did last year, people, because he was even more impactful. And of course, he should be. He's a fourth-year guy last year. But the many pass deflections he had at the line of scrimmage, the pressures he had consistently throughout the year, that's the best defensive front I've seen at Illinois since at least 2015 when they had Smoot, Jihad Ward, Chunky Clements, Carroll Phillips. Those are four guys who were all at the combine, two who were drafted in the top 3 rounds. And probably I would say it's the most talented since 2011 when you had Whitney Merciless, Hakeem Spence, Glenn Foster, Michael Buchanan. That's 3 draft picks there. I think at least 3 of these guys are going to get drafted, and I would bet maybe 4 of them get drafted. That's pretty good, Joe. That's one of the best in the Big Ten, and thus one of the best in the country when it comes to the defensive front.
Yeah, I'll let you handle the best sense. I'll just say it's pretty damn good. It's pretty good. All right,
So one of the best groups in the big, like Michigan would like this group next year.
Yeah, that's why getting those 2, Keith Randolph and Johnny Newton, back was so monstrous, because without one or both, definitely both, I don't know. Do you feel as good? Like, we've talked at length about defensive line recruiting. Like you needed another year of those 2 to come in and be wrecking forces. The Brett Bielema has been really. I was thinking about this before I go in, Jeremy. Maybe you can. I don't know that Brett Bielema falls into hyperbole a lot. I don't remember a time where I'm like, no, he'll, in terms of like, oh, so-and-so is healthy, like, and then they're not dressed or, whatever, like injuries.
He's not always honest. I get what you're saying, but like, he doesn't do the Brad Underwood hype train is what you're saying. Brad's got a little bit better at that, but Brett doesn't do that a lot.
Yeah. Brett's more like, he more shield stuff gamesmanship wise than he gasses up his guys. But when he says like this outside linebacker room, by the way, he coached outside linebackers in the NFL, is one of the best that I've had at that position. I don't think that's a lie or a load of crap to try to gas up anyone. Like, I think he believes that that's just not who he is to gas it up when there's nothing to gas. That, like, I know a lot of attention is rightfully, understandably focused on Keith Randolph and Johnny Newton because they're really, really good. They're all Big Ten guys. But, man, that outside linebacker room, when you look at a Seth Coleman, a Gabe Akis, I don't know what we'll see out of Ezekiel Holmes. He'll be cleared come June, but maybe pump the brakes on that one.
That guy was a starter last year. And I think we thought Gabe Akis was going to replace him at some point last season, but the fact that he's just a part of your rotation along with Alec Bryant, like guys who are very talented, like, yeah, that's Charlie Bowling gets a great group. And that's what's going to be interesting, Joey, is Brett Bielema kept mentioning, I want to get more out of our pass rush. I want to get more of our pass. I think feels like he thought they left something on the table there. Like maybe they didn't complete some plays. Maybe they didn't have the techniques he wanted, but that's why Charlie Bowling is here. And Charlie's really excited about it. And man, like I asked Charlie during pro day just to explain what he's looking for in a certain drill. And listen, I'm mostly a novice at this stuff compared to these guys, right? But the way he was able to explain it to me was was great. I think he's gonna be a great teacher. He's a really personable guy. The guys have responded to him pretty well. I think he's gonna do well in recruiting, but that's gonna be interesting to watch. Is how much more can Charlie Boyd get out of these guys? Because I think Seth Coleman has more to give. I think Gabe Akis clearly is just scratching the surface of what he can be. That's scary.
It is, man.
A lot of one-on-one battles with Keith Randolph and Johnny Newton on the interior.
It works in tandem. And I know we'll get to the defensive backs shortly, but it all flipped a little bit, right? Like last year, it was look at all these draft picks in the back of the defense, and Devin Witherspoon's going to be a top half of the first round guy. Sidney Brown, Quan Martin. We think Kendall Smith might have a chance to find his way into a camp. And now it shifts to, goodness gracious, this defensive front is pretty imposing. Now they have to replace the nose guard spot. Who is that? We think it's probably T.Y. Edwards, Rashawn Wilkins, Denzel Daxon are two guys to monitor in there. Sed McConnell would be another guy.
Depth. They have depth at nose guard. I don't know. Is any of them as good as Calvin was? Like Calvin had flashes last year. That was like, oh, there's that 4-star.
We had the same talk a year ago with Rod Perry being gone, right? So like you don't know. Aaron Henry said it, and at first I was like, this is some coach speak when he was talking about his defensive back. And sometimes you don't know until you know. Now, when you know, it might not always be good, but like I don't know. There's options. I don't know if I would say like a lot of depth at this point, but there are a lot of options.
They have depth at nose guard. I think Sed's going to move back. I would assume he's going to move back with 3 veteran nose guards. I feel like he's going to be more Bryce Barnes is back. That gives you some good depth. He's injured right now, but he's a solid rotation player. But if he would have had to be your starter, you're concerned when you're playing in the Big Ten.
That's right.
So yeah, I think having him as a rotational guy is good. Sed McConnell's a rotational guy, but you got another year of Johnny and Keith to build up some depth. And listen, I get why people want better recruiting wins with defensive linemen. We'll see how those guys develop. But Terrence Jameson has proven he develops guys well. He's a good coach. And Brett Bielema values him a lot with giving him a new title as well with co-defensive coordinator. So they're going to be pretty good up front. All right. Behind them, Joey, linebackers. Return the 2 biggest names that people know. Tariq Barnes has been very solidly consistent and productive, really took off as a leader last year, got really comfortable with us. He's like a go-to quote now when he was not the best quote early in his career. But he's obviously just a solid, consistent performer. CJ Hart was not the same last year. And now you're hearing him talk about that. I know you got a story coming on him. Andy Boo said it yesterday. Yeah, he was feeling that injury a bit last year. So another year removed from that injury. Can he return more to the explosive guy we saw? Because he just did not make those explosive plays last year. But Isaac Darkangelo did. He was really good, the former walk-on. They have to replace him. They tried to get another year of eligibility, could not. But I talked with Andy Boo yesterday, man, and he loves his group. You know Andy, he's really positive, sunny guy, loves his guys at all times, but he even seemed extra excited about having Kenenna Odeluga and Dylan Rosiak as redshirt sophomores. Now James Kreutz and Malachi Hood are redshirt freshmen. He was basically telling me, I feel like I can play all those guys. JoJo Hayden comes in. He's going to need some time, right? Maybe he gets a small role, special teams, whatever it is. But I'm interested to see Odeluga, Rosiak, who wins that battle for that other rotational linebacker, or could Kreutz or Malachi Hood come on? Those guys are pretty talented, but it's a nice mix of older guys, younger guys, Joey. I don't know if there's like a ridiculous talent yet that has emerged out of that group, but it is a deep group.
It is. They've recruited that position really well for exactly what they need. It's not in terms of stars or rankings, not going to knock you over, but they've recruited you, and I think they've identified talent pretty well at that position. Just a young guy. Like they've recruited well. They've had time to develop. It seems like one of those young guys, much like Odeluga did in that dime package a year ago, is going to be able to step up and take some snaps. And we do have to say, like Isaac Darkangelo's emergence, and it's just a big loss, was created or allowed a little bit in part because CJ Hart wasn't fully CJ Hart. Who's it going to be? I would lean towards probably Rosiak or Odeluga at this point. But look, dude, there's still a lot of time between now and September 2nd. But those two seem to me to be maybe the guys to identify and say, hey, circle their names because you might see them out there a little bit more.
Yeah, and both like Rosiak's kind of following the Darkangelo mold. Darkangelo was a core special teamer. Rosiak was on every special team last year, and he made some good plays. Odeluga is a little bit different, but he was a core special teamer, was on the field. So you get that feel of what it's like to be on the field and be counted on. But also Odeluga played that pass rush specialist role. He was basically like an extra pass rusher in their dime package. They had 2 defensive linemen, and then Odeluga was either getting after the quarterback or dropping into coverage. Really bright. He's a really bright guy. I forgot who called him an action figure, but he's kind of like a bigger version of Kalen Tolson. Like not the tallest guy, but just jacked up beyond belief, and a pretty good athlete as well from Mount Carmel in Chicago. That'll be fun to watch those 2 guys, but they feel really confident. I mean, Andy was confident in him last year, but I struggled. Like I was like, is Andy just being really positive about Isaac Darkangelo? Because he was really hyping him up last year. But after what Darkangelo did, I gotta believe that Andy Boo is just being honest that he really likes his linebacker group. So
he led the whole dang operation in tackles.
Yeah, and Andy's a really good coach. He's coached those guys extremely well. All right, there's some turnover in the secondary, certainly, both among the coaches and a lot with the players. You use more talent here than anywhere. Devin Witherspoon's going to go in the top 15, most likely in the NFL draft. Sidney Brown, Quan Martin, both projected in the 2nd or 3rd round. And then Kendall Smith had a fantastic pro day, had a really good year last year for Illinois, really reliable back there. And you got to replace 4 starters, basically. The good news is you had some talent back there, Joey, but what do you make of how they're going to kind of replace what was the best secondary in all of football last year? And of course, you're also losing a coach in Ryan Walters, who is really, really good at it. I think I might have lost Joey.
No, we're back. We're back.
Right, there he is. What you got? Like, what do you think of this group, Joey? Because I would say Taz Nicholson and Matthew Bailey, we can write in Penn as starters, right? I would imagine that's the case. And then who are the others?
Can we build this from the outside in?
Yeah.
Would that be the best way to do it? So corners, Taz Nicholson feels like a starter. They were really encouraged with what he did last year before his wrist injury.
He's a big loss late in the year.
Yeah. Now, conversely, that loss kind of paved the way for a Tyler Strain. It kind of paved the way for a Xavier Scott. But I would feel pretty confident in penciling Taz Nicholson in at a corner position. I think we'll talk to Antonio Finellis this week, hopefully to get a little more clarity. And then your top option would be junior college transfer Caleb Patterson, who you and I have seen, and he is physically quite the impressive gentleman. Then you look at a Tyler Strain, who played pretty well at times, and really he got thrown into action at like maybe the worst possible time in the calendar year as you're trying to win the Big Ten West against some teams that can really throw that thing around a little bit.
Tyler Strain was really good. He might be 5'8". Right, he might be 5'8", but the way he battled and made plays on the ball, I was really impressed by him late in the year. I'm interrupting what you were doing.
I have not a lot of direction really.
Right, no. We did name guys who were potential at corner, and Xavier Scott, I would throw in there, had some bad plays as you would expect from a true freshman playing against Michigan and the such. But I thought it was interesting. Aaron Henry said, we got to figure out where to play these guys. Because we don't recruit corners or safeties, which I think is for the most part true. They've moved guys around a lot. A lot of these guys have changed positions. Xavier Scott started as a nickel. Prince Green started as a free safety. He's played strong safety. Keontae Curry's played nickel, corner, safety. But he said we got to figure out where to play these guys. So is Matthew Bailey a strong safety or free safety? Right? Is Taz Nicholson better as Quan Martin or as Devin Witherspoon? Right? Like, I don't know if he's going to be as good as either of those guys, but you know what I mean? Like, where do they best fit? Yeah. Is Xavier Scott nickel, corner? Is Nicario Harper nickel or safety? I think he's the Sid Brown role. But yeah, there's talent here. There's a lot of greenness to it. There's a lot of inexperience to it, but as you said, they do have the benefit of Strain, Scott, Bailey getting some significant experience last year. They're a young group, but they are a talented group, and this is a staff that's done a pretty good job. And then you just have a defensive front that should really help them. I mean, when you have what we think can be one of the most dominant defensive fronts, not only in the Big Ten, but in the country. That should help a young DB group. So, yeah, we've heard Bielema and Henry say, we got to spend this spring figuring out where to play these guys. So it's hard to make a depth chart for us right now because those guys don't even know.
It's funny. Like at first I said, well, let's start on the outside and move in. And I thought, well, that doesn't really matter because I don't know who's going to be on the outside and who's going to be on the inside.
I was really encouraged that Aaron said, like, we don't even know yet. So like when I make a depth chart, it's like, we don't know. They don't.
I don't think Caleb Patterson's playing safety.
I agree.
Okay. I mean, that's about all I got. And Matthew Bailey's not playing corner.
Yeah. Taz Nicholson's not playing safety.
Is that how we have to do this? And by the way, you've got some encouraging athletic freshmen coming in, Sabor Kareem, hello, in the fall. And I'm not trying to say expect him to start, but I don't.
Elijah Santos, Tyson Rooks are intriguing guys. Prince Green and Keontae Curry. This is the time, right? If they want to play, like they can't let these freshmen pass them up. So it's just a lot of names I know I'm throwing at people, but that's why it's kind of exciting because it's talented guys. It's guys who we've seen flashes from, but you do lose 4 of the best players on your team. Yeah,
man. I'm just trying to think of it's spring game. It's a Thursday night. I think spring game's on a Thursday this year. And everyone's watching the quarterback and everybody else. Like you're either watching the quarterback or you're watching who the heck lines up where in the defensive backfield. Like those are the two things I'm interested by the quarterback, right? Probably the offensive line and the defensive backfield are in the same, I don't know. I know some names.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I have an educated guess on things. But if they threw a complete curveball, I wouldn't be totally floored either. I don't know, man.
And I am interested. I asked, Kenana Odaluga said they were really happy about Aaron Henry getting promoted. And Aaron's taken over safeties. He told us that on the podcast. And then Antonio Finellis is taking over corners. A lot of familiarity with Brett Bielema, obviously. I don't think they're changing much about what they do. Aaron Henry's talked about that. But it'll just be interesting because Ryan Walters was elite at development, right? And Aaron Henry's really good at development. But you did lose a key piece of developing those guys. So just another thing to consider with the secondary. But I think the staff is really good. All right, let's move to a group that, Joey, cost Illinois games last year, for being honest. Does the special teams improve under Robbie Disher, the new special teams coordinator? Listen, we knew they were going to take a step back on special teams with the personnel, right? You lost all Big Ten guys and James McCourt and Blake Hayes and a really good long snapper as well, and Ethan Tabell. So it's not surprising that they had some struggles just personnel-wise. Q Robertson had a really bad inconsistent first 10 games. I thought he finished the year really well, but you bring in a scholarship guy in 2023 with Declan Dooley to compete with him. You got some other walk-ons competing with him. Caleb Griffin, I thought, was really good when he played, especially after the early struggles. But he was really good down the stretch. Just didn't get a lot of opportunities because the wind late in the season. But Fabrizio Pintone came in and hit 7 field goals, and now you're bringing in David Alano. So we've only talked with Robbie Disher once, but I like him. I think he'll do well, but this is a group that has to be better. Last year, they're 89th in special teams efficiency, according to ESPN's FPI. The year prior, they were 28th. And I think we saw whether it was Indiana, Purdue, they lost some games due to special teams.
Yeah, they sure did. And so I think the two keys, special teams, are solidifying your punt unit and your punt operation. And that whether that means more consistency from Hugh Robertson or Declan Dooley coming in and really pushing him to a level. I think that's the biggest one. And then what do they do as returners, right? Like we talked last year and Sean Snyder was, it was all about aggression, this and that. And okay. But it never really manifested, right? It did early and then it tapered out to just fair catch the thing and get the offense out there. It is really what it turned in. I don't know that Robbie Disher, with his history of special team, I don't know that that's going to be the plan again. I'm fascinated to try to learn more. It seems like every offseason, we're going to be more aggressive on punt return and kick return, and then you're waving to everybody whatever stadium you're at moving forward. So, I don't know, but those are the two big things. I don't worry about the kicking operation in terms of field goals and kickoffs because I think Caleb Griffin, for the first time in his career, he's been here for more than a half a decade. He's going into his 6th year.
Right.
He's going to be a special teams coordinator, he said, which is exactly what we thought.
I thought high school athletic director, but
look, he's a young kid still. There's still time for him to pivot into Jeremy's future plans for him. But like, I don't think there's any like you want him to be consistent, and there's probably some field goals that you'd like to see him make. Especially, seems like he was better at times on those long booming ones than some of those money ones and from the 40 to the 30-yard. But I don't think you pay too much mind to the kicking game right now.
Yeah.
And if Alano, who David Alano versus Declan Dooley in terms of incoming freshman specialist is one of the most hysterical like side by sides you could see. Like if he pushes him and takes it, bless him, right? Like that means he beat out a really good kicker. But I think it's punt operation, and I think it's return. What do you want out of the return, and how can you stabilize the punt operation? I think that'll change maybe a lot of how people feel about Illinois special teams. And then, of course, who returns it?
Yeah.
But that goes into, are you going to return it? I don't know, man.
Yeah. Yeah, the aggressive thing didn't work out early on, but, man, it was mostly the punt unit. The punt unit really struggled and really hurt Illinois for most of the season. Yeah, Dooley looks like a linebacker playing punter, and David Alano looks like the soccer player that comes over and kicks in the middle of practice at high school. So that's what.
Also, he's not a big guy, but good God, what a leg on that kid! Oh. Like so what? To peel back the curtain, we generally see a lot of stretching in our 40-minute window and some field goal stuff. Not a big guy, but good Lord, he's got a foot on it. He's got a boot, dude. He's got a really big boot for a little guy. It's not at all proportional.
Yeah, one of my favorite recruits to cover in the class of 2023. Just a phenomenal story where his family comes from, how he got into football really late. He had to convince his dad to do it. I've written stories on that, so you can look that up at Illini Inquirer. The other thing I'm interested in, Joey, because they're starting to get recruiting prospects on campus, is how do they parlay last season's success into recruiting? Illinois got one commitment in the class of 2023 or 2024. Some people like to freak out early about that. I'm not to that point yet at all. But I don't know if they're going to get any of the top 5 kids in the state, because the Michigans, Ohio States, Clemson's, and they kind of pick those guys up. But they had some big in-state recruiting battles. They had a couple guys on campus this week. 4-star Luke Williams, who they're recruiting as a safety out of Naperville North, David Alano's teammate. And then Darian Dupree, Chicago Mount Carmel running back, who's exactly what they need in that running back room, is just an explosive, dynamic, good pass catcher. Kind of goes along with all those big backs. They've had those guys on campus. They're getting a lot of guys on campus here recently. So I listen, I think they're going to recruit well. I know people freak out early in the process when other people get recruits, but they're pretty prudent. And usually it's later in the spring, you get a few on board, and then really in the summer is when you make most of your hay, when those official visits happen in June. But I do think Illinois is setting itself up to where they're going to have some chances for some of the top prospects in the state. I think they'll get a couple of them, Joey. And then it's about evaluation. Who do you get from out of state as well? So what do you think? What do you think about the buzz after last season in recruiting so far?
I mean, I think I don't even know if it's a record in the bowl game as much as it is, especially like defensive back. Their sell right now in recruiting is really, really good. I think
you're pretty high for some positions, right?
Right. Yeah. Quarterback, I'm still fascinated by, because the timeline of quarterbacks is unlike any other timeline for recruits. But I think it's a better sell than they've had previously, right? It's the best sell they've had since Brett Bielema has been at Illinois. Mm-hmm. I get it, man. People see so-and-so commits to pick a Big Ten school and they freak out. And I get it because,
Minnesota,
Wisconsin. But the timeline this year isn't really unlike the timeline Brett Bielema had a year ago. It isn't unlike the timeline he had that first year. It's not even April. Like the timeline, it follows exactly how they've approached this since he's been hired. And in the same way that the offer timeline, like they don't seem to be concerned about Iowa stating it and being the first offer for every kid in the Midwest. Like that just doesn't appear to be their approach. You can make an argument that there are some kids you do need to be that, but that's not cookie cutter. You don't need to be the first for every kid. You got to have a read of what that looks like, Jeremy. But this is the best sell they've had. And if you can duplicate the 23 class, like that seems like the exact footprint for Illinois football. Probably, maybe you'd want more defensive linemen, another difficult position to recruit. But if you can do that again, thumbs up, right? Like if you believe in how they develop, you get some of those higher ranked guys. Hello, Malik Elzy, Sabor Kareem. and go around that and believe in your evaluations. I say that also. Caden Fagan was a highly recruited guy as well.
Yeah, they had 2 commitments at this time last year. I believe it was Caden Fagan and JoJo Hayden, which ended up being 2 really good gets for them. But you look at the in-state, that's the easiest to focus on at this point. Listen, they're going to get some Florida DBs. We know that. It's just which ones do they get? They're shooting very high for certain guys, and I think they should, because they're going to have 3 guys get drafted at least next month, and that's certainly going to help their sell. Running back sell with the guy like Darian Dupree certainly helps when you get Chase Brown drafted. But Marquise Lightfoot, 4-star edge out of Kenwood, Illinois is going to be in the mix there. Listen, Alabama just offered, Michigan, Ohio, like he's got everybody, but Illinois is going to get an official visit from what I'm told. Darian Dupree, you're going to get an official visit there. Luke Williams might be the leader there, potentially at this moment. Tyshawn Griffin, Chicago Morgan Park wide receiver, high 3-star kid right now, slot guy. I think you're among the top 2 for him. Eddie Turk, Lyons Township, Michigan's very high there. If they want him, it might be tough to get him, but he's got Illinois legacy. His sisters go here. I think you got a chance at him. Austin Alexander, corner out of Marian Catholic. So they got some guys in state there in the top 15 that I think they're going to get a couple of those guys, in my opinion. So you get a couple 4-stars. Like the way we talk about Illinois football recruiting is different than Michigan. It's different than probably Michigan State at this point.
It's different than how we talk about Illinois basketball recruiting.
Yeah. You get a couple 4-stars, you keep building on that, and then you evaluate and you develop well. Like that is the path. You want to keep raising the bar in recruiting, and I think Bielema has gradually done it, and I think this class has a potential to do that, but I think we know what Illinois football is, and I think we know what they have to be, which is you're competing with Wisconsin, Iowa, and those guys. Like Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State are just a different world.
If you're looking for a coach or a program to get away from itself in terms of its beliefs and how they go about it, this ain't it.
Yeah.
Like they know who they are. They believe in what works. They have a history, largely, Jeremy, of what works. Are there going to be misses? Yes. Are there going to be guys that you say, well, why in the world didn't they offer them 2 months ago? Yes. I don't know if any of it matters, but like, you know who they are. You know how their timeline operates. They're not hosting big junior days, Jeremy. They focus differently in smaller groups. Like I think the learning process is kind of over. Like we know what it is and we know what they're after. And now it's just a matter of getting them and seeing if you can, as you mentioned, take those cells in the state of Florida, for instance, and push it higher and fight and win some other battles. But I don't think they're going to get away from who they are because they really, truly believe in it.
Man, we did 10 in 10 minutes or in an hour, Joey. I'm proud of us. We got through all 10 storylines there in an hour, but I do want to wrap up with a few of our live YouTube listeners giving us some comments here with some questions as well. John asked, how does this stack up to gains, losses across others in the Big Ten West? If I'm doing, and I've done this in my mailbag, if I'm doing a top 7, the Big Ten, I feel like Illinois is going to be picked 5th or 6th again in the Big Ten West, maybe 5th or 4th. Maybe some people have them there. I would have them top 3 because of what they return on the offensive and defensive lines. They have major questions in the secondary, but I think they have enough talent to overcome those. My question is still mostly on the offensive side of the ball. How big of a leap do they take there? But I think they have enough returning. And in year 2 of an offense, I do think they can improve. I think defense probably going to have to take somewhat of a step back, Joey, like maybe not the number 1 in the country, but listen, I think Iowa's going to be really good. Their offense can only get better. Their defense should be good again. Phil Parker's that good. They have some good returners. They did lose a lot, I know, but they also bring back a lot. Wisconsin really intrigues me because they have some good pieces, but there's a lot of change there. Like there should be a lot of excitement with what they brought in talent-wise, coaching-wise, but a lot of change usually takes some time. So I think I still have Wisconsin in the top 3 because of their talent, and I think it's a really good coaching staff, but that might take some time. Listen, I think Minnesota is as solid of a program as there's been in the Big Ten West here recently outside of Iowa and Wisconsin, but Purdue is losing so much and a new coaching staff. Nebraska is a total rebuild. Listen, I know they're getting talent, but they've gotten talent before. It's a better coaching staff. Ding. But Northwestern, we can't buy Northwestern after the last 2 years, right?
No, I just long for the day. Like, what is it going to take for Nebraska to do something that Jeremy's like, all right,
I like
Nebraska's
their
here.
coach. I like their coach. He took over a dumpster fire. Okay.
Hearing you say that, I know that's also like an insult to dumpsters on fire everywhere in your mind. So, like, yeah, man,
Juwan Howard makes Scott Frost look terrible, right?
oh my God. It's like the roast of Scott. Yeah, man, like, also with Minnesota, like, there's a quarterback change in Minneapolis for the first time in a while.
Well,
Like, so
Ibrahim's gone. Yeah.
yeah, man. Like, so there are questions, and that's it's the same way. Like when I ask what Nebraska is going to have to do for Jeremy to not want to dunk all over, when is Illinois' narrative going to change beyond people who cover the program daily, or even I mean, there's some really good Big Ten writers out there who see it as well. But like, there's also a perception change there that you've got to wonder when is that going to happen. But yeah, the top 3, top 4 in the Big Ten West is a fair place to put them. I don't know that they lose. There's probably programs you probably know off the top of your head better than I do that have lost less. But there's certainly programs that have lost much more than Illinois. I think all things considered, to build off an 8-5 team, you got a lot of guys back who can help you stay in that mix. So you're not just that. Oh, you remember the 22 year that Illinois was pretty good. Like you've got guys to help you maintain.
I'm not projecting them to go 10-2, but I'd be surprised if they don't make a bowl game.
Oh yeah, like to me, the bowl game has now like that's just it. Like that's kind of the standard you've got to set. Now you're kind of jockeying for bowl position. There's going to be ebbs and flows in every program. Every program has them, but I think your year should teeter more towards doing that than not.
Brad, why didn't Illinois sign more players out of the portal?
They're comfortable with what they have.
It got a lot back. Like I get the portal is so exciting, and that's why like Wisconsin fans should be really excited about what they got out of the portal, right? But I think Illinois fans should be equally or more excited about what they got to come back. Like the fact that you got Isaiah Adams, Julian Pearl, Keith Randolph, and Johnny Newton all back, and Isaiah Williams back. You know what I mean? Like those guys are better than anything you would have gotten out of the portal. So to get them back, despite some coaching defections, despite the lure of the NFL, that's as big as anything. And they did address some needs in the portal, right? They went and got 2 quarterbacks. They went and got a safety. They went and got a JUCO corner. They went and got a defensive lineman.
Tight end.
They aren't the like former 4 and 5-star guys outside of Wagner.
But when did that really play out for Illinois in a resoundingly positive way before?
Ahmad Orbebe and Batiku. Those are the 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they didn't have to as much, and they still can add more. Like I would not be surprised if they went and got an offensive lineman or they got one more guy if they find a need out there in the portal.
There's another wave coming after spring ball.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're going to have some wiggle room and some chance to go explore the market, and you're going to have a better idea because you've seen your guys on the field for 15 practices and all winter. So there's another wave coming. We say that, I don't like you and I are anticipating them going out and blowing the world up with what they're going to get, but there are going to be options that remain.
Greg, I wouldn't be surprised if LZ and Dixon end up starting before the season is over.
No.
Listen, I love when people say, is there a chance this could happen? Of course there's a chance. Yeah. LZ's talented enough. Dixon's talented enough. There's enough wiggle room at wide receiver, unknown at wide receiver. Like Pat Bryant's got to reach another level, right? Casey Washington has to reach another level. So yeah, there's some reps to be had at wide receiver, and losing Brian Hightower opens up a spot, whether that's for, an Ian Pugh or Ashton Hollins, or more likely probably Malik Elzy
or Sean Miller. Yeah. I mean, I like to think of like, let's see if them crack the rotation first.
Yeah. That's
yeah. But look, man, Malik Elzy's that's a real deal. He's a real deal wide receiver, man.
I'd be surprised if Elzy didn't get at least Hank Beatty reps, right?
Yeah.
A couple handful of reps.
Yeah, I'm not going to buy that he's not going to play. Like in my mind, I think Malik Elzy's going to play.
How is this team going to score without Chase Brown, Brad P.S.?
Welcome to the question, Brad. That's the question. I think still going to run the ball.
Could you be better in the red zone? Because if there's one flaw of Chase Brown, it's that he does not move the pile. Like he can move guys in the open field. Like if somebody's trying to tackle him, he's going to drag that guy. But he does not really move. He's just not a huge guy. He's ripped, but he's 205 pounds, right? So like if you get Josh McCray and Jordan Anderson, Caden Fagan, whoever it is, or even a Luke Altmaier to run a little bit more, I thought they could use Tommy DeVito's legs more in the red zone. Like, I think that's a lot on Barry. I think the red zone is more on Barry, but I do think if there's one weakness of Chase Brown, I think Barry like relied on him a little bit too much as the guy to get the ball rather than the decoy or, run a boot with Tommy DeVito and hey, there's Tip Ryman open in the end zone.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out how to frame this to Barry Lunny. Like, was there an inherent, like just an instinct, like, well, this guy's a Doak Walker finalist. Of course we have to give him the ball on the 2-yard line. Like, did Chase Brown's talent just maybe skew your approach in the red
Josh
zone?
McCray not being healthy.
Yeah, like I think you got some big back options down there. I think you're probably gonna, in an ideal world, Luke Altmaier's throwing for some touchdowns. Like Chase Brown wasn't a touchdown machine now. Like when you talk about those end of season awards, one of the knocks was, hey, he's not in the end zone enough.
Yep.
So I mean, I don't. You're not losing 25 touchdowns from your running back at this point. You're losing a good running back, but there's other ways they can get the ball. I think Tip Ryman is a big, to your point. I think if you start getting him more comfortable, more consistent in that passing game, Tip's a huge dude. Like, he's a huge dude in the red zone.
You know who was as good of a red zone guy as anybody last year? Isaiah Williams. Like, think of how many tough touchdowns he had in the red. Like,
that's right.
I think part of it's play calling, but part of it personnel as well. The offensive line didn't block very well in the red zone. But of course, when you know the ball is going to Chase Brown, it's a little bit easier to defend as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that comes out. It's a huge part of the season. And we'll wrap up. How did we blow this one, Joey? The number one storyline of the spring of the offseason, new uniforms. Drew brings it up. I'm sure you guys will discuss the release of new uniforms, as it's definitely one of the top spring storylines. He uses a sarcasm font detector there, Joey.
I need a beer.
It's a big story. I don't know. Listen, I get the intro. Brett Bielema has said it's not going to be a huge change. So I think it's going to be, I think black eye is still going to be the thing.
Orange.
It's going to be
orange. Orange. There's not a lot of schools who use orange. He loves it. He loves it because there's a degree of uniqueness to it. There's a degree of identification to it. Okay. Jaden Epps had just tweeted, "Run it back, Illini Nation."
Can we need to confirm, like, does that mean he's back? Run it back. Does it mean it's back, Joey?
Oh, true.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I gotta text somebody, be like, all right, is he definitely back? Like, can we say I am returning? I need that from all these guys when they tweet these.
I don't know. Dude, we're an hour and 12 minutes in the podcast. We had 2 basketball returners who, 1.5, I think.
No, that's great news. I mean, you see Jaden Epps tweet, "Run it back, Illini Nation." To get him a day and age, we talked about with Piper last week. Continuity is, for me, the biggest thing about this offseason. If you want to build something, and it's really difficult to get these guys to come back, even Danger and Epps, guys we had questions about, right? Guys that didn't have the greatest body language late in the year, but to get those guys bought in for another year, I think is huge news, because you want to be able to build with these guys. And, you go through some tough times the first time you get on the court, but to come back and learn from that and grow from that, I think is huge. That's what you need. And you want guys who've been part of this team, know what the standard is, know how Brad Underwood coaches, knows what the idea of everything they do is. I think that's really important. So I think Lou Goody has announced he's back. I don't think we've really had questions about Ty Rodgers. Sincere Harris deleted his tweet. They said he was coming back, so we'll find out on that. But man, if you can get most of these guys come back, I would love to see RJ Melendez back. I think you feel really good about that. And then add a couple transfers that complement all those guys.
Jaden Epps gets points for me because he unknowingly, I like to think of him as listening to this podcast and knowing.
Oh, that was not Jaden Epps. That we were duped.
Oh, golly. Get a life. Get a damn life.
Piper retweeted it, and then I retweeted it. We were duped.
Imagine having to. God, that pisses me off.
Those people. I'm
sorry for.
And the greatest part of it, Joey, we have it live recorded that we were duped. I can blame Piper, but I didn't look myself.
Imagine you could be like playing video games or watching TV, and instead you decide to make a fake Twitter account. God,
those people.
Sorry, guys, for whoever's listening.
But Dane Danger, that's his actual account.
Yeah.
That's his actual account. But anyway, to get back to the question, do you think there's going to be a script thing with Illinois football? They've had more gear. Like, you get a little Illini script at the top instead of the shield at the top of the neckline?
I don't know. I know they're excited. I'm so annoyed. I know they're excited about them. And look, real deep dive. Their equipment manager, I'm drawing a blank on his name. I can see the assistant equipment manager in my mind. He's a really plugged in guy, and he's really well known, well respected. It sounds weird to say that. Maybe some people don't quite. I want to say Jake, but it's not Jake. He's the assistant. Some people don't quite follow it, but like they're excited about the uniforms. I don't think we're going to see them until the fall. Like maybe later in the summer, but I do not think we're going to see them until the fall.
I could see late summer. But do we get any more questions in about jerseys? Like, we are not going to, like, we will ask Bielema about it again at some point later this spring because you guys
I won't. Go for it.
Yeah, I'll ask him at some point. But like,
there's like 100 things I care more about.
That's a social media thing. Like, they're going to announce that on social media.
Yes, that is all. Like, they are going to just swim in the inner engagements and all of that come with putting that out there on social media. I have 150 other things I'd rather ask Brett Bielema than what about those jerseys, huh? Don't care. We'll see them when we see them. Yeah. I say that, and I'm already a little annoyed because we just got duped on a freaking live pod.
It happened. Like, hey, they did a good job of copying everything, so kudos. It got me. Some guy just tweeted it at me that I got to do. Yeah, I did. It was doing a podcast, saw it retweeted, and didn't look into it. So that's my fault. It happens to the best of us. We're all human.
Get a life. Good God. I say get a life as we sit on Twitter all freaking day.
Yeah. All right. That's another part of this offseason you got to love. Like, did that guy, is that like the greatest day of that guy's year right there? The guy who did that? Is that the greatest day of his year? Like that I retweeted that, the Piper retweeted that. Is it?
Jake Rush. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Drew.
Yeah. I'm just wondering the psychology of doing that. Just
why?
Like, do you go back with it? Like, it's probably some college kid or something, or high school kid. Like, and they're sitting there with their buddies, like, remember that time I got, yeah. Hey, good for you. Joey's more quick about this than I am.
So annoyed. I just don't understand. I don't understand the interest in doing that.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. Tomorrow, we'll have Michael Tulip on the podcast. We'll do something live. I think we're going to do about 1 p.m. Central Time. We will talk a little bit of Illinois basketball. We do have Dane Danger announcing his return. We'll break that down with Michael Tulip. But Joey Wagner, besides the duping, this is a good podcast, man. Appreciate your insight.
Yeah, it was fun. It is nice to have spring football back to cover. Like, let's end on that. Like, it is. It's fun. This team is intriguing. I wish we could see more. I know like maybe 15% of the fans care that we can't see more, but we care. We wish we could. We're going to do the best with what we can. 40 minutes has been fine. I wish there was more, but we'll give you the best spring coverage we can give you without seeing much.
Yeah, they Brett Bielema, I think, heard all he needed to know when Scott Frost did not know what was coming. And I'd like to know more about the team. I'd like to see some one-on-ones just to see personnel. I'm not going to try and give away scheme and all those things. So that's a shame. But I will say this, Bielema does give us a lot of players, a lot of coaches. I love being able to get assistant coaches. We get some insight. So you can keep tuned to Illini Inquirer about that. So for Joey Wagner, I'm Jeremy Werner. Thank you everybody for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get your podcast. If you're on the live YouTube stream or you watch it on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe to us. We really appreciate the support on that side of things as well. So everybody have a great day. Take care of each other, except for that one dude who's faking people on Twitter. And we'll talk to you next time on the Illini Inquirer podcast.